Hello everybody. I got caught in a bit of a rabbit hole about 40k, which is prone to happen as I get fascinated with pretty much anything. But today we're going to be having a little look at another part of the channel, which is exploring fantasy monsters and different things that you can add and lift and pull directly onto any sort of campaign or pen and paper action that you got going on. Today, let's talk about beholders. The ultimate paranoia-ridden monsters of all time in the game of Dungeons & Dragons. We are going to be having a look at this absolute iconic monster, what makes it work, why it's cool, and how to make it even more deadly. If you're looking to understand and use the beholder to its full potential, then strap in as we go into detail, not only with the beast itself, but also its many variations. Anyway, let's get started. Few creatures deliver quite like the beholder, and due to its uniqueness, it is probably one of the monsters most used in any given campaign. A beholder is instantly recognizable, as it is a large, fleshy orb around 5 or 6 feet in diameter, whatever, depending on the DM's discretion. Covered in tough mottled chitness or scaly hide in typical shades of green, brown or grey, dominating its form is a massive central eye, beneath which sits a wide mouth, a toothy maw capable of devouring trespassing adventurers. Sprouting from the body are 10 flexible eye stalks, each ending in a smaller eye that can unleash devastating magical rays with all manner of effects. These creatures levitate and maneuver with effortless precision despite what their corpulent body would have you believe, and their senses are extraordinary, granting near perfect 360-degree vision. And in combat, they pose a threat to any party makeup, as the central eye projects a powerful anti-magic cone, shutting down any and all spell castings, while all of its eye stalks fire away. The bog standard beholder, if you can say that such a thing exists, typically lets loose in combat with 3 random eye rays per turn, from a potent list including charm, paralysis, fear, disintegration, slowness and telekinesis, and depending on the devilishness of the DM, this is one of the places where you can put in a lot more oomph for your bug. Consider firing rays of scorching heat like lasers or all manner of different things that you can come up with. A particular devilish DM that I played with at one point had decided that his beholder would have a sleep ray, and I can tell you that thing pretty much wiped us out. These creatures adapt strategies on the fly as they are analyzing foes with a cold calculating intellect. And while the mechanics states that these rays are random, there's nothing that says that the beholder doesn't have control over them and as such could choose or even focus rays on specific targets. At their core, beholders are both plagued and defined by overwhelming paranoia, arrogance and an obsessive need for absolute control over all which they perceive. In the mind of this creature, they see themselves as the pinnacle of creation and without the capability of being at fault, meaning that if anything bad happens, it is due to the fault and machinations of others. Every creature is either a tool, a threat, or an annoyance to be manipulated, enslaved, or eliminated, and this makes them excellent early campaign or mid-campaign big bad evil guys. This whole cascade of dark personality traits make for a creature that is at the same time incredibly solitary, as they can barely tolerate their own kin, viewing fellow beholders as flawed rivals or imperfect copies, but also these are creatures in need for gathering up underlings for them to suppress. Underlings like this would handle scouting for threats, guarding the outer areas, hunting for food, and carving new tunnels in accordance to their master's mad designs, and even being used as pawns in a war against other monsters or even other beholders. The ideal minion for this one-eyed tyrant would be creatures who are numerous and easily cowed, and not smart enough to pose any sort of real threat, which means that they would often be kobolds or goblins, or, in an interesting turn of events, the dim-witted fish people of the Kuatoa. The lair of a beholder are masterpieces of paranoid engineering, being modeled around the beholder's nature as a floating magical being. It would be littered with vertical shafts, chambers infused with anti-gravity magic, and pressure trap-laden tunnels, and hidden observation posts for all of the minions, or even hidden one-way mirrors for the beholder to view and see what's going on at all times. When beholders do gather, it's usually under a dominant hive mother, a rare, more powerful variant capable of magically dominating others, and such hives, however, quickly tend to collapse under betrayal and infighting. Beholders themselves can be as varied as any DM really needs them to, but already within the setting there exist several types. There is the Death Tyrant. When a beholder's alien psyche fixates on surveying beyond death, reality sometimes twists in response. Its flesh rots away, leaving a grotesque mold-encrusted skull hovering on spectral waves of energy. The 10 fleshy eye stalks decay and vanish, replaced by 10 ghostly glowing eyes that drift independently around the central bony orb. Pinpoints of malevolent red light gleam within the empty red socket, radiating undying malice. And unlike its living counterparts, the Death Tyrant lacks the classical anti-magic cone. Instead, in its central eye, it projects a field of negative energy. Creatures within the cone cannot typically regain hit points, and any creature that dies within this area should immediately rise as an undead under the Tyrant's absolute control. This ability allows Death Tyrant to rapidly amass legions of undead servants, often packing their vertical layer floor ceiling to seamless with shambling corpses ready to overwhelm any intruder. Gazers are among the smallest and most amusingly vicious members of the Beholder family. These tiny aberrations are the slightest manifestations of a beholder's feverish dreams, typically born when a beholder suffers illness or delirium that it warps in a sense of scale and perspective. A gazer resembles a miniature version of its parent beholder, a floating spherical body maybe between 8 inches or 20 centimeters across, with a single large central eye and only 4 short eye stalks. Gazers are aggressive, territorial, and surprisingly bold, and in a beholder lair they would act as spoiled pets and watchdogs for true beholders, who in a rare case find these little creatures to neither be threatening and actually be rather amusing. And such beholders rarely destroy them outright and may even adopt them as pseudo-children. A goth, no, not a goth, but a goth, often called a lesser beholder or night eye. These creatures are not dream-spawned like true beholders and gazers. Instead, they hail from the same mysterious alien plane as spectators and slip into the material plane by exploiting flawed summoning rituals meant for other such guardians. Goths are rapacious tyrants driven by an insatiable need for magic, and while meat sustains them briefly, they must regularly devour enchanted items and raw magical energy. If they do not do this, they risk being shunted back to their home plane, and this dietary need makes them aggressive raiders of wizard towers, adventuring parties, and magic-rich sites. They lack the extreme xenophobia of true beholders, so they sometimes form loose clusters and serve or even become servants of more powerful beholders as lieutenants and enforcers, demanding tribute while pretending to be the greater Eye Tyrant. Now it's time for the most creepy of them all, the Death Kiss. These lesser beholderkin are the grotesque result of a true beholder's vivid nightmares about blood loss, death, and insanguination, often triggered by a severe encounter with an adventuring party where they got wounded, or even encounters with vampires. A death kiss resembles a pale, bloated beholder orb, roughly 10 feet across, with mottled gray and muted colorations. It lacks the eye stalks. It lacks eye stalks and the toothy central maw of its progenitor. Instead, it bristles with 10 long, fully retractable tentacles, each ending in a circular, toothy mouth capable of draining blood like the worst lamprey that you could imagine. Death kisses are driven by an obsessive, paranoid hunger for blood, and they hunt relentlessly, draining rats and humanoids alike and leave desiccated husks behind. Older editions feature even more variants of the beholder. I did mention the Hive Mother before, but there are mentions of Elder Orbs, Eyes of the Deep, Doom Spheres, and blood kisses instead of death kisses. There's also a really weird one which is called an Aster Ether, which is like a planet beholder, and much more. But hey, if this does well, then I might make another video discussing these. But for now, let's talk treasure. In the paranoid heart of a beholder's lair lies its meticulously curated treasure hoard, and I phrase it this way as the treasure hoard is more a reflection of the beholder's intellect and need rather than out of mere greed. A beholder scrutinizes every item and sorts its wealth into categories. So a beholder could make categories like tools, gifts, hazards, trophies, and clutter. This obsessive organization ensures nothing escapes its all-seeing gaze, and a beholder will notice the very moment that anything is missing. Tools would include usable magical items that the flowing tyrant can actually employ. Wands, rods, staffs, rings, and amulets that enhances its eye rays or grant defensive buffs, or even scrying orbs and staffs of teleportations. Obviously, beholders cannot wear gloves, boots, or armor, so they would be discarded or repurposed or given to, minions. Gifts are offerings from minions or defeated foes, often enchanted weapons, jewel, and rare spell components presented in hopes of currying favor or staving off death. Hazards compromises dangerous and unstable items deliberately kept as traps and deterrents, cursed objects, volatile potions, and artifacts that could harm intruders but pose calculated risk to the beholder itself. While trophies represent victories of ego, petrified enemies, the skulls and banners of slain rivals, ancient relics from conquered wizards, and the shattered remnants of other beholders. These are proudly displayed in elevated galleries and anti-gravity chambers, often positions where only the beholder can fully appreciate the item. Clutter fills this treasure hoard. Piles of mundane coins, gems, art projects, tapestries, broken weapons, and oddities. The creature finds most of these aesthetically pleasing and potentially useful later, as it understands that other creatures have a use for gold, even though that it does not need it itself. This is the beholder. Megalomania and the need to dominate made manifest, and absolutely unique and iconic. I have very few notes, as most of the ways to make a beholder deadly or do anything with it is to place it in synergy with minions and in environments. Overall, I firmly believe that there are very few perfect monsters, but the beholder might actually be one. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider leaving a like and subscribe, and maybe tell me what monster you would like me to look at next. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!